Hi, it's Stuart Turner here. I'd really like to welcome you to the Leadership Unleashed podcast today. For those of you who haven't joined before, I'll just give you a little bit of context. This is a podcast that's aimed at all of you leaders out there, business owners, founders, and we get a guest on board, comes and talks through some of the experiences they've had, some of the learnings, and shares a bit of valuable insight and also some actionable steps that you can take away and incorporate into your daily practice. So I'm really pleased today. We've got a really interesting guest, Ed Stubbs, who's a financial planner with Xentum. So just on that, I'll just pause and hand over to you, Ed, if you just want to give us a quick intro to yourself, your role, and then obviously the Xentum group.
Yeah, so I'm Ed. I'm actually 2 weeks away from my 10th anniversary at Xentum. I'm a chartered financial planner, and I currently help around 50 business owners and executives to grab life through financial planning. So whether that be sort of helping them draw money from the business, helping them prepare for an exit with an understanding of what their number needs to be, or by investing their exit proceeds and protecting against their biggest risks. As a company, we've been advising clients for about 20 years now. I think this is actually our 20th year. And we've got specialisms in business owners, retirement estate planning, divorcees, and sports people. And clients love our sort of alternative, transparent, and capped fixed fee model, which is quite different to sort of 98% of the financial advisor market, who charge percentage fees on investments. And this actually especially provides real value to business owners investing their exit proceeds. And if I can quickly just tell a very quick story on why Xentum was founded. So our founder's dad, founder Dominic's dad, came from a farming background in the Lake District, and his dad was wealthy from a young age, and he had a group of professionals around him that unfortunately were only really interested in one thing, and that was his money, and not what was important to him and his life. And the advice provided by these professionals led Dominic's dad down a path that unfortunately concluded with money problems, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and unfortunately, tragically, an early death from pancreatic cancer. And Dominic, who'd been in the financial services industry for about 15 years at that point, realised that sort of amongst an industry that was focused more on product sales and commissions and what was in it for them, there was a different way to do this. And that's been Xentum's mission for the last 20 years. It's about how can we have the most positive impact on people's lives. I suppose that's a bit of a summary about myself, Xentum, and why we do what we do.
Well, thanks for that, Ed. That's a really good intro. And obviously for you, you've got a very interesting breadth of clients there. And I know Dominic, and I know the sort of the background to Xentum. He's a really quality guy, really helpful and very focused on that purpose. That the whole thing of adding value and providing excellent service as opposed to it being a transaction. So he's talked to me at length about that. And the idea for this podcast had really come from those conversations that I've had with Dominic. I have something called 5 pivotal steps to chief exec success. And they're basically about a direction. So having a direction for your business, where's it going, and then building out a plan to get there. They're about building a collaboration, so a collaborative culture for your team to engage them and involve them in that process so they can take some responsibility and feel part of it. It's about decision making and making sure as the business owner or the chief exec, you're focused on the priority decisions and you're not getting distracted by things that you could delegate to someone else. It's also about connecting with peers, tapping into their knowledge and their learnings and sharing support. And then the last one is about personal development. So it's obviously a fast-moving world, and I know you've mentioned that in previous chats we've had about the need to be adaptable, and this is an important one, and it's really where the coach comes in. It's helping that person to continue to move and evolve to help their business go forward. And the conversation with Dominic has really looked at how could I take those 5 steps and add to them and strengthen them. And the bit of the jigsaw, if you like, the missing bit of the jigsaw is that enduring vision, that plan that you've got post the business for yourself, from a personal perspective, your family, and then onwards from there. And this is where, you know, you guys come into play with that longer term financial plan. And if I was to add that to those 5 steps, so we would cover that and then also underpin it with that longer term financial plan, you know, how would that work and how would that add value? So the aim today is really to work through some of those scenarios, understand a little bit where the challenges sit for the business owner from a business perspective, but then also look at how adding that financial plan into the equation could really add some value, as I say, and help to provide that clarity and direction, and also build a level of confidence that everything that I'm doing today is in line with where I want to get to in the future, both from a business perspective, but also from a you know, a personal and enduring perspective, as I say, for myself, for my family, and all of those things that happen outside. So we'll just work through those scenarios. We've got some questions. I'll ask the question, I'll give it a little bit of context, and then between you and I, we can just expand on that and explore how that will work and add some value. So the first one is around, as I mentioned, direction. So how will a clear, aligned direction really boost my business and personal success? And a lot of challenges that my clients come to me with, often when we strip it back, the things that they think are the challenge are the symptoms. And actually, when you look at it, it's actually about direction. And they might be feeling really overwhelmed, for example. And this is this is a real challenge for chief exec business owners. And there's a stat, I think, last year that says about 79% of chief exec business owners feel overwhelmed in the work that they're doing. And a lot of it is about getting lost a little bit and not having that clear sense of direction as to where they're going, and then being able to work back from that and get a clear roadmap of action, a mission of the steps that I'm going to take. And I'll just give you a little bit of an example. A client that I was working with came to me a little while ago, and he had a plan he wanted to take a sabbatical for a year with his wife. He had a successful financial services business. He had a plan. He wanted to get, in 5 years' time, take a year out of the business, leave it in a healthy state, and be confident that the people that he would have in place could continue to grow the business, and he could go off and enjoy his his year out with his wife, and come back and have his business continuing to advance on the path that he wanted to. And actually, when we started to delve into that, it was clear that whilst that was a sort of vision, it was actually more than that. It was about getting a balance in his life. It was about getting financial security. And also what we realized that there wasn't really a plan to get there. He was making wrong decisions. He didn't have a view on the sort of capability that he would need in his team. And through that conversation, we basically built a sort of transition plan. There was a plan in there for growth for the business. There was a plan in there, or a better understanding of the team that he would require and some of the capability gaps that he had, and a plan to go and build those up. And then also post the sabbatical, what was the next step? Where was he going to go with the business? And it was actually a 10-year plan to get to a place where he could exit. And I guess for you, Ed, thinking about all of those things that I've just talked about, how do you think that having that financial clarity and that benefit of a longer term financial plan, how would that have added some value to that for my client in that particular situation?
I mean, I think it mainly focuses the mind in terms of what needs to happen. You know, what we find with clients who get a sense of where they want to go is that it's very easy then to start to reverse engineer what that looks like within the business. You know, as you say, starting to put the action into place and the action plan into place to get you to where you want to be. Only at the point that you're clear as to where that needs to be. Can you start to put the action plan in place? And I suppose on top of that, once you do have a clear plan, you know, I've seen the motivation levels of CEOs and business owners just go from, you know, a 3-4 out of 10 to a 8, 9, 10 out of 10 when they can clearly see what's the impact going to be on them, and that impact is sort of, you know, it's something that's genuinely important to them in their life. You know, they've outlined a clear vision as to what they want, and they can see it, and all of a sudden that motivation goes from, as I say, relatively low to much more significant, which can very quickly play into the numbers, into the team morale, all of that sort of thing in terms of the business.
No, definitely. I mean, that's a really good point, actually, because I'd say the biggest thing that came out of that work with that client was getting that clarity and that confidence, and being a lot more at ease with where he was today, and when there were difficult things that came up, just being able to see that longer view, and just work through some of those challenges with a much more, I guess, confident, positive outlook. You could see the journey was going on, and it was comfortable with that, and the daily challenges were just things to work through. There were steps to overcome, and I think this feeds into the next bit, which is around building a collaborative culture, and how a collaborative culture helps to drive, you know, the team, and the business forward to go on and deliver success. And this is again something that I find as businesses grow. Another client of mine was chief exec of a software development startup, and this had grown very quickly. So it started off as, you know, an exciting small team. It was an idea that he'd come up with and gone off and developed at pace, and now he's at a stage where he'd got some external investment, and it was a very, you know, he needed to make a transition from being the founder to being the chief exec, and part of that was really, um, building a leadership team as the first sort of action, and then empowering that team, and creating that sort of culture where they felt part of it. And I spent quite a lot of time working with him to really get him to understand the differences in the two, and setting the team up to go on and sort of, take it on from him and start to take ownership. And there was quite a lot of work we did around, a shared purpose, so understanding his purpose as the founder, and also helping the team to tap into that. Obviously, the strategy, the direction that we've talked about, and getting them to take ownership of a part of that, and build out a plan that would enable them to go and execute it. And for my client, it was about creating that framework where he could step back from making the sort of daily decisions and being the point of knowledge, and really trusting his team to go on and be successful and add value. So it became much more of a figurehead role. And I'm just interested to know for you, um, how you felt that for him, having a sort of longer term financial plan, how that would sort of come back to the decisions that he takes today, and how that would feed into, um, the work that he was doing to build up that collaborative culture. Because one that stands out for me was, a priority for him was getting people to really stay with the business, and not, you know, not get disillusioned with it, but really become part of the fabric, if you like, of the organization, and be there for the long haul. And I could see that if they could tap into where he was trying to go, then that would really help to bring it together.
Yeah, I think helping to define that is important. I think, you know, once you have that purpose, and once you can communicate that clearly, you know, we're sort of, as a business, you know, working on how we communicate in a really good way from a marketing perspective, but also you know, you have to market to the team as well. You have to market the purpose and get everyone onto the same page. And once you're clear on what that purpose is and what they're trying to achieve, it's so much easier to market that to the team, I suppose, and to then bring everyone onto the same sort of direction and the same thinking. And I think once you do that, it is, it's pretty powerful, isn't it? You can get an exponential benefit from that as opposed to a linear benefit from that. And that flows through into recruitment. So recruitment within that culture and within that direction, and can have a significant impact.
And I guess that comes back to the intro that you gave about where the business has come from with Xentum. And what any particular steps that you take, Xentum, just to help people to align to that?
What, in terms of Xentum's mission per se, or
yeah, just in building that sort of collaborative culture so that everyone buys into, I guess, Dominic's.
Yeah, from our perspective, I mean, one thing, I don't know whether it's been announced other than, well, maybe here, but we've just in the process of setting up an EMI scheme from our perspective, and that's a case of everyone having a portion of ownership. So all employees will have a sort of share in the direction of the business, which financially sort of ties everyone together, but that's on the back of that purpose and direction. And actually, we probably didn't get that right until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And then we had a managing director, James, come in, and he's been fantastic in that respect. I think the team now is very much focused and very much culturally aligned and moving in the right direction. And that comes off also Dominic, I think, having a pretty good understanding of where he wants to go in his personal life now, and what he wants to achieve.
Right. So I think the next question is about decision making. So we've got the direction, we've got that collaborative culture, which helps to make the decision making more effective. And again, for me with clients, it's there's lots of things to do, and it's about how can they not do more, but how can they focus their time on the right things, so they're focused on the priorities, and again, not get distracted by things that are not actually aligned to where they're trying to get to. So the direction there is really critical, but then also empowering the team, as we've just talked about, so that they can pick up some of those other decisions, and the chief exec can focus on the priorities. And there's a few things in there. There's one about getting comfortable with not always getting the decision right, so being able to adapt and learn quickly, and being comfortable with that. It's also about being comfortable with not the unknown, because we don't always know. We have to go on the the information that we've got, and trying to provide that framework, which is where the direction comes in, is really important. And then also through that, tapping into opportunities as they come up. And I think I just wondered, from your perspective, how having that longer term financial plan would help a client dealing with a decision today, a priority decision that's business driven, but having a longer term plan. How would those two come together, and how would you see that adding value to a client that I might be working with?
Yeah, I think without that plan, you end up making, well, a lot of business owners are busy, aren't they? They have so much on their desk day to day. It's very easy to get into the noise of decisions and struggle to make decisions. I think one thing we're encouraging people to do more often, and it's things that sort of, I think Bill Gates does it. I think other big CEOs does it, in terms of just taking days out, or days out, or weekends out, or whatever it is, to just get away from the sort of day-to-day business, and whether that's to think just on a personal level what they want to achieve, but within that, then it's like, well, getting out into nature, getting into a space where you have the headspace to make those decisions, and then having the clarity of the financial plan behind that, it just focuses the mind and allows you to make a clear decision that you know is right for the business, as opposed to just getting into the day to day, making decisions with all that noise around you. I think that plan just helps with that in so many regards. So
yeah, and then that noise can really, you can get lost in that, can't you? And I guess the other thing there is where you've got where you've got some metrics that you can go back to, which I guess is where the financial piece comes in. You can you can adapt quickly. You can pick up on something that has perhaps not gone to plan, and you can adjust. You can learn quickly. You get back on track, and that brings confidence. And I find again with a clear business direction, a clear mission to get there, it's easy to adapt and change the route that you take. But if you've got that clarity of outcome, and the longer the outcome is, the more confident you are that the steps that you're taking are going to get you to that place. And I think
yeah, I think you're right. I think the numbers side of it is important. I think the beauty of the financial plan, and it's important to say we can never give sort of 100% level of confidence in a financial plan because we know that life changes, and we know plans are made on assumptions, and that life experiences mean that goals and what's important to people do sort of morph over time. But being able to work back, at least having the best guess in terms of what you want to achieve, and working backwards from that, using, from our perspective, good cash flow planning software. We pay, I think, the most in the market to get the best level of cash flow planning software. A product called Voyant. You use that to be able to take back into the business and frame the numbers that you've got. So let's say let's just say it's an exit planning scenario, and it's in about let's say it's 5 years time. You can give yourself a year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 growth target that gets you to the place that you need to, based on the number that the cash flow planning has given you for an exit, and that allows you just to make much clearer decisions in terms of big decisions that you need to make as a business. Is it going to get me to those figures? Is it going to get me to that plan that is it going to help me achieve that plan that I've outlined? And as we've said, ultimately it has to be adaptable. What we've learned from creating financial plans over the past 10-15 years is to a certain extent they have to be quite lean. It's the high level stuff that's important. It's the vision, it's what's important to the person, it's having the best guess at what your goals are going to be in the short and long term, and then just getting down to the nitty gritty of the action points. If we go into too much detail and we spend months and weeks and months creating the perfect financial plan, most of the time the financial plan is on the is in the bin within about 3 weeks because things have just changed. Do you know what I mean?
Things move on, don't they? Absolutely. Yeah, things move on, don't they?
It needs to be lean. Would be my tip, certainly.
Yeah, definitely, and that's something that in the work that I do with my clients, we start off with something, and the more we get into it, the journey changes. And if you were to look back over 6 months, the plan that was initially put in place is we've moved on. It's a very different position. I mean, if I just go back, just on the back of what we've just said there, the client that I mentioned earlier who was looking to take that sabbatical, once we've got that vision, working back from that, what was clear was a lot of the decisions he was taking today were actually counterproductive to where he wanted to get to. So being able to bring it up a level and step away from the detail, get that clarity of direction, and then build out some key milestones, if you like, it then enabled us to start to plan out the key decision today. And all of that coming together just provided that framework and a bit of flexibility to move around, but still be confident that we're going in the right direction. And then equally within that, he could, delegate decisions that have a level of confidence that his team could pick up. And then also stuff that he just didn't need to be involved with, just leave it, it will fall fall by the side. It's not worth the attention. And I guess the other thing on there is about, it feeds into your point actually about the relationships bit. So if I think about the next one, which is about connecting, and that's probably where you and myself come in. It's about connecting with other people, and the point that you made about, if you get sucked into the detail, it's very difficult to step back and actually see the bigger picture. And being able to remove yourself from that environment and connect with, other peers who perhaps are going on a similar journey, I think is really, really powerful, really important. And I have a community of business owners and chief exec, and they're all in different stages of their journey. So you've got some who've just started out, some who have been doing it for a number of years, and others who are starting to consider, how do they exit. And we come together, we pick up a little bit like you and I have. We pick up a particular scenario, then we work through it, and the benefit of being able to talk through that with other people, either who have already done it or just got an interest, is really powerful, because the insight that comes through from that either helps people to make a different decision, or it validates the decision that they're making, and it builds up confidence. And I just wondered, from your perspective, how you would see the value of a financial planner in that, because actually that's one part of it that we don't have. How would you see that as adding value to that group?
Well, I think interestingly, just to take a step back on that side of things, I think if you've got a network of people who are at very similar life stages, or perhaps people who have gone on to the next life stage, when we talk about setting goals, it's actually there's a lot of evidence that people really struggle to sit down and actually think about what they want to achieve, and sometimes it needs a bit of prompting in terms of like a checklist of 15 or 20 things that perhaps you might want to achieve to start to get you to think about actually what it is that's important to you. There's some great sort of research in the financial planning space around goal setting, and actually how difficult people can find it. And I think a network like that actually can do some of the prompting, if you know what I mean. It can give people ideas about, well, what could life look like? What especially people who've gone through that already. What might I want to do, and can help to inform those goals. So that it's an interesting perspective in terms of what a network around you for a CEO can provide when it comes to financial planning, because it can help conversations with people like me once you've got a bit of a sense of from other people perhaps what might be important to you.
And I think just on that, actually articulating your goal to other people immediately puts a little bit of pressure on you to think about how you would execute it, and then also getting it challenged. The more steps you go through there, the more substantial that goal becomes. And then if you have to go back to the group and the question's going to be, how are you getting on? Suddenly it's going from a sort of half commitment to a full commitment with an update that needs to be provided. And that, as you say, I think is really powerful. It's sort of a commitment that I'm going to do this, and I need to be able to demonstrate that commitment, as in, these are the steps I'm taking, and I'm making some progress, which is a good way to tackle the whole execution of a goal. I think the other thing there with the community bit is for a lot of my clients, they get quite lonely. It's quite an isolating role, and it's quite tough. All the decisions sit with you, as in the accountability, and a lot of the time, obviously, they don't, where there's challenges, they don't want to share those with the team, because they don't want to be concerned. They don't want to offload that concern onto the team. Equally, in some cases, they don't want to take it home with them. So it's like, well, where do I go? And also, who can I talk to who might have experienced something similar? And that whole concept of dealing with the things that are uncomfortable and having to get comfortable with that. Certainly for me, that community bit comes into play there.
Yeah, and our MD actually speaks very highly of a couple of roundtables that he goes to in terms of getting that support, getting that just people around him that are going through exactly the same thing, going through those same decisions. So similar to your community, in terms of when you in the day to day again, you sort of have to shoulder everything yourself, don't you, as the CEO? You don't want that to fall on your team ultimately. If you're leading in the right way, and as you say, that can become a lonely place. And I definitely think those sort of events or those sort of communities where people are in the same position, making very similar decisions and in a very similar sort of emotional state as well, can be very, very valuable and very rewarding.
And that sort of brings us on to the next point, which is about personal growth, and the fact that for someone in that position, they're going to I think it's stated that every 2 to 5 years, or 2 to 5 years, they're going to have to adapt and change the way their business is operating. And it's really important that they are able to adapt and grow with that. And I think probably for yourself, I'm sure you find that, but for me, a big part of my role is helping that person to get comfortable with their strengths, if you like, and also identify areas that they need to focus on from a development perspective, whether that's personally, or whether they need to bring in some extra capability within the team, and getting that sort of direction and confidence to deal with things that they've not experienced before, but also the whole thing of an action that they take that might not lead to a successful outcome, but looking at that from a positive, as in it's a learning experience, and as a result of that learning experience, what can we take away from it? And certainly from a coaching perspective, that's a big part of my role. And I just wondered, for you, from a sort of financial planning angle, how do you work through that with your client?
I mean, I think there's quite a nice sort of analogy in terms of investment risk. When we get people, or when we first meet people, I mean, certainly the financial education in this country is pretty terrible, isn't it? Nobody learns about finances in school.
No.
If I have a conversation about pensions with people, and I've had many, the level of knowledge and level of education, unfortunately, is pretty terrible. It's really, really low. And also on top of that, people's comfort and ideas about the stock market and investment risk, and long term as an investment, you want to be taking especially if you've got a long term time horizon, you want to be taking a decent level of investment risk. But the sort of negative side of that investment risk is the emotional and the psychological side of what happens when markets go down. But I suppose it's about starting to be comfortable with a level of risk and comfortable with the downsides of that, given the long term benefits. And there's a bit of a sort of play over with that from a business perspective and a personal growth perspective, because we know, and I definitely know personally, because my character to a certain extent is steady Eddie. Don't get out of your comfort zone, and I'll I probably went through that for 2 or 3 years, up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I realised I do need to take risks, and from a personal perspective, that has been huge for my confidence and career over the past couple of years, and I'm just a far better financial planner from that perspective because of it. So I absolutely, from a personal perspective, understand the need to take risks to allow yourself to grow personally. And as I say, I think there's quite a nice sort of crossover between education around investment risk from a financial planning perspective, and how that can play into encouraging CEOs to push themselves forward and to take risks personally, and to and to fail if they need to, and just learn from failure. There's a great book. I'm a big reader. There's a great book called Black Box Thinking, by Matthew Said. You might have read it.
It's a very, very good book, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's about, isn't it? It's about the benefits that you get from trying something, failing, and iterating on that with many examples. So that would be my view on that side of things.
And just when you're working with a client who, how do you challenge them to do something differently?
I mean, I think it's always about, I suppose, asking good questions.
Yeah.
Understanding how they feel about things, to then understand how you do go about challenging that, and I suppose, helping them to visualize what the impact could be on them. If they if they can't understand what the impact is going to be by the path that I'm suggesting, then it's very difficult for them to make that change. So I think it's, the beauty of the cash flow planning software that we use is it is quite visual, and it definitely helps people from that perspective understand decisions, and helps them to action, that helps them to go forward with perhaps some of the advice that we give. And I think, one thing, just I think there's probably a certain personality type, or there's a higher percentage of a certain personality type within the business owner space, as we know. So I think if you're a specialist in the business owner space, which I am, you have to take a certain approach with business owners. You have to be a little bit more assertive. You do have to challenge them, and you have to be confident in what you believe and what your advice is. Not saying you wouldn't be with other people, but there's a certain way that you have to communicate that, shall we say, with those type of personalities.
It's about being that trusted partner, isn't it? And having an open, honest, frank conversation, but in a sort of stable environment, trusted environment, where and through the challenge, it might be that they come back to the same position, but it's been robustly challenged, and they understand all the implications there, and they get source of knowledge.
I was going to say we sometimes we have to give some bad news, unfortunately, and that's a big and important part of what we do. We can't just tell people what they want to hear. We have to on the back of our experience tell people how it is, and then find a way of bringing them on that journey that in terms of the way that they need to go.
And there's some mitigations that could come out of that, and the earlier we have that conversation, the earlier we're able to address that, the more chance we've got of mitigating it successfully. And certainly for me, that's a very important part, and being that trusted partner that they know that they can work with through those challenges.
And I had a new client, actually, probably a couple of months ago, who had a relatively lofty expectations about what he wanted from his personal life, and once we sort of played that through, the figure in terms of what he would need to get the business to was actually a lot higher than I think he was ever expecting. And it took him aback a little bit. I think it knocked his confidence, but it just gave him a little bit of a wow, okay, right, that wasn't quite what I was expecting. And that's just the reality of the situation. It made it real. And actually it took a bit of time just to go away and think about it, and actually got a message last week just to say, right, I'm ready to reconnect,
ready to go,
and look at how we can plan to either get to that point. I've not had the meeting with them yet, but either get to that point, or perhaps we need to just be that little bit more realistic on the personal side. Prioritize some of the goals and perhaps let a couple of them go, and they're just as bonus goals if he does sort of exceed all expectations from a business perspective, which he could do. We don't want to put any constraints on him.
No, but at least he's coming to the table comfortable with that and fully aware.
Yeah, and I think having that conversation as well does build that trust of him ultimately, because a lot of people would have said, well, we can do this, we can do this,
We can do this,
if he then appreciates the fact that, well, actually, we've just been honest with him and real, then that's part of building confidence in the relationship with his advisor, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Just on to the last point. A lot of my clients, they get so sucked into their business and making sure their business is growing that they often make very short-term financial decisions, which are driven by the next stage of the business. How do I scale it to 7 figures or something like that? But they don't give a lot of thought, or they don't make time to consider the sort of financial position for themselves out of the business and also their family, and they don't spend so much time really getting to the scenario that you've just given, getting that real clear view of what it is they want to achieve from the rest of their life and how they're going to pay for it, basically, and how they're going to leverage their business, and where does their business need to get to drive that next aspect. And that's something that the truth is, in a lot of conversations I have, it isn't something that comes up, and it's very much focused on where we are today and how do we, as I say, keep growing forward. And a little bit that we spend time on is obviously that balance between the work and the personal, but still that longer term financial plan bit is probably the gap, which is where I think the 6th step comes in, which is your world. And I just wondered for you, how you could see sort of aligning financial decisions today within the business would help with that longer term. So if I was to get a wealth plan, how would those two come together, and what would you see the benefits being from a client that I'm working with?
Yeah, well, we've got a really good example, actually. I think, and I was listening to a podcast, the Built to Sell podcast, on the car on the way down to a client meeting on Wednesday. There's a guy, a guest, who said a lot of business owners have a very round number in their head in terms of perhaps exiting the business at some point. He said it's usually either 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, or 10 million. And we had a business owner who I think had 10 million in his head, and I think he was sort of in his early 60s, and at that point he felt like he was quite a way away from that. And I think he got introduced by another business owner. He went through the wealth plan process, which is about understanding what's important to him, and then putting some best guesses in terms of what his goals were, in terms of quantifying that, and also putting a timeline on that. So putting a vision in place, putting those goals in place, and then using the cash flow planning software to give a sort of a number that he could be confident in, that he would sell the business by a certain point, and he could do all of those things that he'd outlined to us in that meeting. And actually, once we'd done that process, the number was a lot closer to where his business currently was. He wasn't. He wasn't as far away as he thought he could. He thought he would be. And then he sort of reverse engineered all his targets over the next 3 years to get the business to that number. And I've never seen someone go from, again, like a 3 out of 4 motivation, it all feels like a long way away, that number that I've got in my head, to bloody hell, I can get there.
I'm really focused. 3 years.
Focus, motivation. I can get. If I can do this, this, and this. And perhaps with a bit of help, as I say, a bit of help from someone like you in terms of a business coach and helping making critical decisions. All of a sudden, he went from down here to up here, and we watched him sell for the number that he needed, and now he's invested in a way that's that will help him meet all of those goals in the future. And I think it's that impact that it can have on the focus, the motivation, the sort of
energy,
reordering the energy, the sort of ordering of the goals in the business perspective, getting the targets right, it can have a huge impact. So it's a nice example of what a financial plan or wealth plan can give you, other than like a typical advisor looking at just the pension products or your insurance
Yeah,
or that
yeah.
side of things.
Exactly. That
What's
is
completely value.
yeah. I mean, the pension conversation can be a bit dry, whereas with that scenario there, in bringing it to life and really sort of connecting all the bits of the jigsaw together, I could see that that there's real energy there. It's very positive, isn't it? You can take control of it and really drive it and go and make things happen. Um, Yeah, I mean, this has been really helpful, Ed. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate all your input. And I'm just going to do a quick recap because coming back to where we started, obviously the conversation with Dominic, me talking about the 5 pivotal steps that I work with people on. So we talked about direction, um, and where I'm going with that is I think having that longer term, that financial direction, and then almost working backwards from that and looking at where we are today, where do I want my business to get to, and just bringing those bits together can really be, I think, can be really powerful. The next bit around collaboration and the need to have a collaborative team. Again, if I've got that longer term financial view, I can make sure that um, I'm focusing on building that team and also helping them to become part of that longer term journey. Because ideally, I want my team to stay. I want them to be as excited about the future as I am. Um, so I think there's real value. I can see how the two bits come together there. We talked about decision making and decision making driven by the financial implications both long term and also from a business perspective, and also aligning to that direction is really helps my client as a business owner to focus on those important things and not get distracted by things that actually, when you really look at them, it's just noise, and they're not going to they're just going to sap up my time and energy, but they're not actually going to give me any benefit.
Yeah.
The bit about networking and that support and tapping into other knowledge, and again bringing into that equation the financial aspect is really important. The personal growth perspective, and then last of all, as you say, the financial plan, the wealth plan for the future, and just keeping the two sort of connected together. And as you've said with that example from your client at the moment, I think there's really powerful value in bringing that together. So, I mean, I'd look to this as a 6th pivotal step, if you like,
Yep.
adding that wealth plan on the end of it, and the coming together of someone like myself in my role, and also someone like you from a planning perspective, and almost working through that with the client from a collective aspect, as in, where is your business? Where do you want it to get to? What do you need to do to make that a success? But then also working with yourself to have that longer term view, and just keep them sort of in sync with each other. And then also where there's other challenges, there's that adaptability piece there that's really important, being agile and able to move in a sort of iterative way, but keep the two things sort of connected. And I think the
Yeah,
benefits there,
absolutely.
mindset and confidence perspective, are really important.
Yeah, and one thing I'd also say is I've probably mentioned a couple of examples around sort of exit planning, but you had a good example about a client who just wanted to go on a sabbatical, and he wanted to put his business in a place that he could go and enjoy life for a year or 2 years. We've got a philosophy at Xentum, which is grab life, which is partly about taking action, so
Yeah,
partly about sort of a bit like Nike, in the sense that it's about trying and actioning things rather than winning per se. It's about taking action, not being passive within, say, a business. But it's also about just going and enjoying life.
yeah,
Going,
yeah,
going, enjoying and experiencing the best that life has to offer. And that's how we try and give our advice. We've got a separate or a new sort of initiative called Xentum Adventures, which is
yeah,
where any Xentum client can use a bespoke travel operator that we have a connection with,
yeah,
to build a sort of bespoke and unique holiday. And any client that sort of goes with that travel operator gets a sort of little gift or an experience dependent on the money that they've spent on the holiday. So they get a sort of free experience if they've gone through
Yeah.
this travel company, which is quite a nice add-on,
Yeah.
and the philosophy aligns with all that we've talked about today, really.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's great, isn't it? Living in the moment, but also, and I think that framework that we've talked about enables you to live in the moment because you can enjoy it. You don't have to be fearful of it. You can embrace it, as you say, but you can also be confident that you've got that framework, and the fallout from trying things and then perhaps not going to plan is mitigated. It's managed and it's
Yeah,
controlled, which is
and
which is good for everyone.
I suppose the point I was making was that goals don't have to be in the future. goals
No,
can
no, absolutely, yeah,
goals can be in the now and the short term. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be what's going to happen 10, 15 years in the future, because those are the goals that are probably going to change quite a bit
well,
in the
they'll
next 10
change, yeah,
years.
absolutely, yeah,
you know
yeah, yeah,
they help you to set a direction, but some people want to say, you know what, I'm just going to get the business in a place where I can go and have 12 months in Australia, or whatever
yeah,
that might be. That's a more common path these days as well, and
yeah,
a key part of financial planning, really.
yeah. Great, great. Well, I'm just conscious of time, Ed. It's been a really great chat, and I really appreciate you coming on board with this. You've shared lots of really valuable insight, quite a lot of things to take away there. Just before I wrap up, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to add at all, or any suggestions that we go and look at and incorporate into our thinking.
Not massively. I mean, I would just encourage people to go away and do the exercise of thinking about what about money is important to them, and it's a question that I tend to ask at the start of a discovery meeting, which is our first meeting.
Yeah,
It's what is important to money about what is important about money to you. And some people will then, or most people will give quite sort of high level concepts, and security or freedom, and that's great, but I'd encourage people to just go a little bit deeper, keep asking why freedom, why security,
yeah,
and to sit down as a couple and just have a bit of a think about that,
yeah,
and that will start to get you to think about what you want the business to look like, what sort of comes off the back of that. um we sort of have a couple of meeting process where we do that, then we understand where are they at, where's the business at, and then the second meeting is about getting that action plan in place.
yeah.
But there's no reason you can't start to do that yourself without the immediate help of a financial planner.
Yeah. And
So
it's interesting that because that's exactly how I approach it with a client. The question is, what is it that you are looking for? What is it that you want? Because often they'll come, as I say, with a challenge or a problem, but actually we step away from that and look at that bigger question, and it's about them being honest and really getting to grips with that, and then we can start to work with it. Um, so I totally endorse that, and it's a really important question to ask, and also for them to spend some time just thinking it through and getting to grips with it.
yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, as I say, Ed, thanks ever so much for your time today, and I'll wrap up there. But yeah, let's speak again in the future. But thanks to everyone today, and any questions. I will share Ed's details afterwards, and sure you can reach out to Ed with any questions you've got. Equally, if you'd like to get in touch with me about coaching, my details will be shared after the session, and hope to see you on board for the next podcast that we've got. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership and Lead podcast. I hope you found value in today's conversation and are inspired to take action on your own journey. To dive deeper, I invite you to complete the Leadership Self-Assessment. This is a powerful tool designed to help you gain insight into your strengths, identify areas for growth, and take the next step in your personal and professional development.
You can access the assessment directly by scanning the QR code on the screen or visiting stellacoach.co.uk/self-assessment. And don't forget to follow our guests. You'll find their contact information below to learn more about their work and insights. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Unleashed podcast for more inspiring conversation. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode as we continue to unleash your potential.